Like,
Yeah, his name is Steve Wilson.
oh, okay.
Never mind his Indian accent and his American name. It's all on the up and up, I assure you. And he'll gladly accept gift cards or your bank account number for payment.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to make reference there to my offering to people. That's got my. I'm still trying to hit buttons here.
It's all good. You do that.
You get a little
I was
filler
going to
for
say
us,
I was
okay?
trying to figure out how long it's been since you came down from
Right.
California to pick up the Big Beast build, and I was thinking that was a few months ago. Do you have any idea how long ago that was?
I believe that was May. Could have been April,
It
but I'm pretty sure it
was,
was
well,
May.
according to the video,
Yeah?
July of 2021. Does that sound right to you?
No.
That's what it says.
No. No, that was something else. I don't know. I haven't had Big B since then. Are you sure the video you're looking at is that did you actually look at the content to see that that's when I was there?
I saw it was when you were there. I didn't play it. I just looked at the date that I attached to the video, and the
Is it
date
just
says July of 21. And I'm like, how could it be over a year?
nah, no, it's not been. It's
Not right?
been. No, that's not right.
We'll have to
That's
see
not right.
if maybe the chat room will correct us. I have some fans that know what I've done better than I do. Yeah, it doesn't seem like
Okay.
it's been a year, but I don't really question it, because as I'm getting older, I'm finding more and more often things that feel like they were fairly recent are much further away than I thought they were. Like time is getting compressed the older I get.
Well,
I'm becoming a human zip file.
I'm going to your channel right now, and I have this displayed on my stream, and I'm searching for Doug Betts on your channel. And
You probably have to
see,
look for Big Beast build on my channel.
I was scrolling through the thumbnails. Here it is, 9 months ago. Here's the video on your channel called Live Big Beast Build Part 8 Final with Special Guest.
That's the one.
It says
And that,
9
what do you see a
months ago.
publication date on that?
Let's see if I actually go into it. It is muted.
Rufus in the chat room thinks it was 3 months ago. Well, it's obviously not 3 months ago.
February, streamed live on February 18th, 2022.
It was February. Wow, I don't know.
February.
I'm going to have to correct the timestamp or the
Wow.
date setting. So February 18th of 2022. So we're just, what, 2 months, little less than 2 months shy of a full year.
Yeah.
And I haven't had any tech support calls from you about it.
Well,
I assume it's been good for you? Been working?
yeah, the computer's been good. I've had troubles with it, but I don't believe it was anything to do with the computer itself. It was with what I'm trying to do with it. Now I am streaming the browser screen that has us both together. I'm looking for some way to maximize it. Hey, studio present, you're in the show. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing it.
In the chat room has contributed $5. Super chat says, hey, Carey and Doug in the chat, this community feels like home. Right on. Love it. I hope everybody feels welcome here, because as long as you're a nice person, you are always welcome in my chat room. So I ran across an interesting problem. I don't know if you caught my show the other day. If so, then this isn't a fair test for you. Not really a test, just like a little, isn't it interesting kind of a story.
Okay.
Customine's uploading TV shows that they're downloading, that they're pirating to their Google Drive to share with their friends. And the Google Drive is private. It's not public.
Okay.
They've been doing this for some time, and they have a rocket fast internet connection. Like, I'm jealous when I see their internet just flies through big files that would take me much, much longer to upload. So customer says, I think Google has blocked me, or the ISP has blocked me, because now that specific computer gets the little round globe with the slash through it, showing
Okay.
that there is a LAN connection, but no internet connection.
Okay.
Replace the network card, replace the network card driver, swapped the cable for the computer next to it. They're both on the same router, switched them. The one on the left works fine with either cable. The one on the right, the one I'm describing, no worky, no matter what. It just says, so reboot the computer, reboot the router, release, renew the IP, run through the repair on Windows 11. Same problem. It's just like permanently not able to access the internet at all, but it can access the local area network just fine. What do you think that is?
What it is, I don't know, don't have a idea, but the next place that I would turn for troubleshooting was put a different drive in, fresh install of Windows and see if that works fine. Because that's going to separate whether it's hardware or operating system.
So let's say we put a new drive in, did a fresh install of Windows. Still comes up exactly the same. Globe, local area connection, no internet.
And you said you changed the network adapter? Did you say
Yes.
that?
Not only that, but I swapped network cables. So the computer
Yeah,
on the left.
Yeah, I got the part about network cables. I just want to make sure that you put in another network adapter so it's a different MAC address. But that's the computer. That's not the MAC address of the.
I updated the network driver. I have a video capture of it because you have to see it to believe it. So I said, okay, I think what's happening. Have you ever dealt with a flaky network router or switch?
Yes.
Where bizarre network activity occurs and it's not dead.
Yes.
But those are the toughest problems to nail down.
I've got a good story that's specifically that. It turned out to be a network switch. But
well, here's what we did.
This one.
And I want to hear that story, but I knew immediately after seeing that both computers are connected to the same router, but the computer on the right, no matter what you do, it gets that globe and you just can't get the internet back. I tried system restore to go back to when it was working. No. So tried a different network cable, turned off the router, turned the router back on, of course, reboot the computer, all that stuff's consistently the same. It is just never coming back online. So logged into the router, went under administration, under the backup restore, did a backup of the router configuration, and then hit the factory reset button on the router, which is in the same area as the backup and restore. This is a TP-Link Archer A9, not exactly an expensive router, but and this customer has 3 different routers and they've got them segmented on. That's why I needed to back it up.
Sure.
Reset. Sorry, I'm acting like I'm hitting the reset with a paperclip, but no, I actually did it from within the router. Router reboots, immediately logged back into the router, reset up the password, restored the backup file, computer's back online again. So I said to the customer, show me this problem. Customer drags one of the TV shows over to their Google Drive. This thing is flying. It's going so fast. And then it just pauses and then it times out and you get a globe and you're right back to where you were again.
Interesting.
So I put another router in there, problem solved.
Okay.
So it was the router.
Yeah. The router somehow, could the router have been objecting, for lack of a better word, to the pirating of video content?
No,
by that.
You know what? I'm having a similar.
The problem doesn't show up until he does that. The computer is working after you did the factory reset. The computer works fine on the internet until he downloads copyrighted content.
Uploads.
Okay, he already has it on his computer. He's uploading it to his Google Drive.
Yes. I
Yeah,
think I have a video of it. Maybe I can show you the video. It's pretty cool. Let me
right.
see if this will work. If I go to, let's see, let me go me full screen and let's see if this works. So everything's working. Go to upload the file. File is uploading very, very fast. And watch the
Bottom
bottom.
right corner. Yeah.
And before the file is finished, it gets about a little more than halfway through. And then that becomes, you'll see it turn into the globe showing that there's no internet connection. This will happen relatively soon.
Okay. No internet access.
And that will remain that way indefinitely. Put the new router in, upload that same copyrighted content, repeat the process. And all we did
And
is swap the router.
do we know if the problem also occurs on other copyrighted content, or is that the only one that was attempted?
Well, the reason I bring the story up is it has nothing at all to do with copyright content.
Okay.
What I believe it is, and the reason I mentioned this person's internet is so fast, I'm jealous. I think
Yeah.
the router is getting choked out with so much data throughput happening on the upload side, and something in it is failing. And you don't notice it until you try and upload something large, and then it just kind of chokes it. And once it's choked, you can't bring it back. And it doesn't affect any of the other computers. If a different computer were to upload the same file,
Yeah.
I suspect that it would also behave the same way. And the frustration was there was no way the customer could figure out how to get the internet back. And they thought for sure they were so focused on copyrighted content. They were so focused on Google Drive or their ISP, like an ISP can tell if you're a
Yeah.
BitTorrent, for example. But they wouldn't just shut off your internet entirely to one computer.
No,
So
they wouldn't be able to. But I'm intrigued with your theory that the router was getting overwhelmed by that computer. Are you postulating that the router has then just blacklisted that computer's MAC address and won't take anything more from it, won't interact with it at all?
no, I
Or
think
it's
the
just
router is glitched.
glitched?
It's
All right.
failing. And it's
Okay.
failing in a way, like I have a wireless bridge that I use, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been working great. But now when I go to download files, I'll get like, I don't know, about 5 megabits per second download. Is it 500? And 5 megabytes per second download speed. And then it'll drop to 1, it'll drop below 1. And it never used to do that. And I've reset the bridge, I've done everything I can. I believe my bridge is failing in that same kind of weird, flaky
Right.
way where it's not, my upload's fine. Upload is completely unaffected. And it's only when I'm downloading large things, it starts really good for a few seconds, and then it just slows down and it goes below 1 megabyte. And I switched out my router and I've tried different computers. It does it across all the computers. And so in both cases, these are cheap networking products.
Sure.
Well, I'm a fan of TP-Link for what they are, for what they charge. This was a relatively inexpensive TP-Link Archer A9 that the customer had. And my wireless bridge is a no-name brand, out of China. I've had it over a year, and I think the stuff just gets flaky. It's not dead, but it's also not repairable.
Well, they definitely do get flaky. That's something that I definitely have seen. Before we get away from this router there, I got more questions. Is it your suspicion that this router on an internet connection that's not as fast as this person's might never see this problem occur?
That's what I suspect. Yeah.
Yeah.
because the router never exhibited a symptom before.
Yeah.
And I suspect something's either overheating in the router,
Yeah.
or it's causing some part. It's probably either heat related. It could be a cold
Entirely
solder.
believable.
I don't know, but they're not, they're not worth fixing, but
Right.
fascinating. And I had to get a screenshot of this because it was repetitive. If I factory reset the router, that's the only way you can get that computer back online again. And then you can repeat it and have the same problem happen again. And I suspect if that upload was throttled, the router wouldn't have spazzed out, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
And the router's cheap. It's easy to replace, inexpensive. Yeah. That's my theory.
And this router used to perform this function just fine.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until recently.
So is there any chance I can get my hands on this router?
Probably. You want it?
I'd love to experiment with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to experiment with that.
We've already got it replaced, and I don't know what else to do with the old router anyway.
What are you going to do with it? Yeah.
Send it to you.
I'd love to get my hands on it. That would be a fun adventure.
So,
My audience is saying, "Oh, there's a Doug again." That's a Doug thing.
That's a Doug thing.
That's a Doug thing to want to go dig into.
Right on.
Intriguing little tweak. But
now, if you could open it up
seriously would like to.
And go at it with a soldering iron and fix it, that would be really impressive.
Nope. Nope. I'm fascinated with that. I'm fascinated with that level of work, and I would love to be able to do that. But no, I'm not going to take the learning curve to figure out how to do that stuff.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Ah, great, awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to see what experience you have with it. Hopefully, it'll do the exact same thing for you.
So, do you want a peripherally related story? Okay, client says they call me up and say their computer is really slow, and it was just one person reporting that their computer was slow. I said, well, what is slow about it? Everything's slow. Well, no, give me a specific example. What's slow? So I get them down to the point where they actually can type characters on the keyboard, and it takes seconds for a keystroke to appear on the keyboard. I try connecting remotely to the computer. I get connected remotely, but then I get kicked off, and the connection doesn't stay. And then somebody else in their office reports having a similar problem, and not too long after that, a third person does. So I find, okay, we got an office-wide problem here. I can't connect remotely, so I need to go out to the office. So I do that and go out, and I find that the individual computers' connections to the server seems okay when I'm testing it, but once in a while I have a problem. Boy, this resolution on my stream is just terrible. Yeah, I don't think I can fix that on the fly. But anyway, I start running some tests. Now, this is a couple years ago, so I'm struggling to get the details right in my mind. I think I'm going to be fairly close on this. I try some internet speed tests, and I get it dragging down to like 5 megabits per second download, and lower and higher, and just bouncing all around the place. And I find that that's intermittently similar on the other computers in the office. So I'm suspecting an internet connection. I call Comcast, and that was their internet service provider, and work with the technician there, and they show everything on their side looking okay. Now, this is after restarting the router, restarting computers, restarting the network switch. They had just one network switch.
And modem?
And, well, this one is a combined modem router from Comcast.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then with the Comcast technician, we'll get to the point of me plugging my laptop into another port on the Comcast router slash modem. And I'm similarly getting inconsistent speed tests. It's a little bit better, significantly better, but not what it's supposed to be. Then the technician suggests something that I hadn't tried before, but in hindsight makes a whole lot of sense. I disconnected the network switch from the router, and then we're getting full-blown normal speed. And that's when I decide, okay, it sounds like the switch. I go grab another switch and bring it in and hook it all up, and everything's good. So it was the network switch being connected to the Comcast router was causing the whole system to be flaky.
Do you remember the make and model of that switch? Or not even a specific model, but like let's say a Netgear 8-port at approximate age?
I will want to say it was a Cisco switch. Can't swear to that right now, but I'm just turning to another computer here because I think I can find it pretty quick.
How long was that switch in place, do you think?
Several years. So it was plausible. I mean, I didn't even bother with considering whether there might be warranty coverage. We just replace it and move on. So let's see if I go over here and type.
Those are the most difficult problems to diagnose. These intermittent things appear to be working, but under certain circumstances, they don't work. I had a network switch go out about 2 weeks ago, I want to say, for one of my clients. And they were having an issue where their internet would go offline about once or twice a week. And it started after they got this whole new Ubiquity system and they tied it into their old network. So they kind of have two different networks bridged together. And the oldest piece of equipment is the Netgear 16-port gigabit switch. And they called me one day, and I told them, start writing down the date and time that you have to, what they're calling the white box. It's a Ubiquity Dream Machine that's in the other building. They have two buildings side by side with a wall between them. I don't know why they didn't knock the wall down, but regardless, about once or twice a week, they've been losing their internet. And the person who installed that Ubiquity system says, I can't figure it out. It's not on my end. I think it's a piece of the older equipment, maybe the network switch in the other side of the building. So I'm like, could be. It's been there a long time. Not the first time I've had to replace it either. So I have to drive over there because when talking to them on the phone, they said that half of the building was offline. The other half was online. So I know their internet's working fine. And it's not just one computer. Well, the others are working. All of them on that side are down. So I asked her to look and tell me what lights are on the network switch, explaining to her which box is the switch. She goes, there are no lights on it. Okay. Well, I need to go over there with another switch, and I do have one on hand. So I go over there, and I'm just thinking in the back of my mind, I've been wanting to replace the switch anyway to see if it's related to those intermittent internet disconnects that affect both sides. So two birds, one stone. I wanted to do this anyway. So I go over there. I have to get a ladder, things up high. The cables are real short, so it's really tough to kind of work on a ladder and deal with these really taut cables. I noticed the power adapter is plugged into a UPS, but you can see the prongs of the power, and it's not all the way plugged in. So I forced it in the rest of the way thinking, well, this will be a quick trip. But I was going to change it anyway because I've been meaning to, but I was just curious. And no, it didn't make any difference. So I take the new switch, and anytime I replace the switch, I'm going to replace the power adapter, even though it's the same make and model.
Sure.
Could be the power adapter caused the switch to fail. It could be that the switch caused the power adapter to fail. So when I switch them out, I want to switch them both while I'm there. I don't want to drive another half an hour, make a second trip because I was trying to cut corners. So I swapped the switch, swapped the power supply. Everything comes back online. Everything's good. And their internet has not gone down since then. I took the old switch and I took another power supply and plugged it in to see if it's the power supply or the switch. And the switch lights up with a new power supply.
Yeah.
Now, these switches brand new are $109 at Best Buy. They're not a major purchase, but I don't want to junk it if it's still good. The problem is I can't really ever trust it. So I went on eBay and I spent like $10 to get a new Netgear power adapter. In fact, I bought two just to have a spare. So I keep one power adapter with this old switch. And then when time permits, I'll hook this old switch up and run it through a bunch of tests and see if it's, you know, I have to use it for about a month straight on and rely on it to see if I can trust it again. And if it turns out that it was just the power adapter this whole time, then I'll have a spare switch I can rely on. If it turns out that the switch is still exhibiting some funkiness, then I'll save the power adapter and I'll have two spare power adapters because you know these things are proprietary. And I'll order another. Either I order it or it might have a lifetime warranty, in which case I could send it back to Netgear for the cost of shipping and get another one, put it on my part shelf for the next time this happens. But that switch had been there many, many years. And I think this is the third time I've replaced it since 2003. So they last, I'm getting about, I want to say 8 years out of them.
Yeah.
How long do you think a router or a switch should be good for?
I don't count on any particular number of years for any piece of hardware really, because I've seen some hardware just go on and on and on, and others last barely past their warranty. So yeah, I don't have a number in my mind for that. But if I've got a client with a problem and I troubleshoot it down to a switch or router, whatever it may be, my mindset is just fix the problem and move on. And I don't worry too much about how long that one's been in service.
So you wouldn't necessarily go, you know what, this switch is looking a little rough. Maybe for preventive maintenance, we should schedule replacing it.
The only time I do that is if it's got a fan that's making noise in it, because I have one that I replaced fairly recently, and I let it go way too long, allowing it to make noise, fan noise. And the reason for that is because it was in a room where it didn't bother anybody. Nobody was complaining about it. But when I walked into their building, this switch is upstairs, having to go around a couple of walls. And when I come in their building on the first floor, I can hear it. But nobody ever complained about it. And I wound up just not getting around to it for quite a while. And then when I replaced it, it was let's see, what was that, 24 port switch with a fan, and in that office we had two 24 port switches. It's just by the way their offices grew in a second building. So what I wanted to do is replace it with a 48 port switch. So replacing both of the switches that were there, and so that's what I wound up doing on a weekend when nobody was there, and massive amount of wires, and wanted to clean up the tangle a bit and pull out some obsolete equipment that wasn't even plugged in anymore and clean the place up. That's probably, if I could use anything to excuse my procrastination doing it, it would be because I wanted to, really tidy up that whole place.
Yeah, I've been there too. I also don't replace parts unless they really look like they're about to fail. I just stepped outside the room here for a minute so I could give you an example of what I'm talking about.
Yes.
This thing belonged to a customer. He had two of them, and they were there when I started working for him. He has since sold his business, and when he did, we were tearing things down. He didn't want it stuff, and I was like, well, despite how old this stuff is, it still works. It does have the fan in it, like you're talking. It has a couple fans on the side. But I actually cleaned it up. You should have seen it. You think it looks dusty now. You should have seen it when I took it. This thing had been in service 24/7 for probably over 10 years, I would guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a manufacturing date on this, but it's a 24-port gigabit switch. Hoping there'd be a date on it somewhere.
That looks like it could be the same model as the one I replaced.
Yeah, you got two fans there.
It looks the same.
Are there two fans there? No. So it looks like the fans are pulling air in and blowing it through the other side. And then they just had this sitting on like a plywood board, wiring board with the phones and everything else.
Yeah.
It wasn't like in a proper server rack. And it's nice that, you know, it's got the traditional PC power cord. There's no special adapter that's needed, but that probably explains why you need the fans. If we could get that power supply external to the unit, that pulls the majority, I believe, of the heat and puts it externally. But yeah, the customer had two of these. I don't know what happened to the other one. This thing is really, really old. But the thing is, it's still gigabit, right? I don't have any
gigabit, and it works. I don't have any problem with that at all. Now, when I take out a piece of equipment that is still functional like that, I will keep it around, but I would never sell it to a client as a piece of equipment. But in an emergency situation, if my client's down and I've got this in my car, I will put that in, and I'll tell them that it is an obsolete equipment or used equipment from another office, but it's functional and gets you up right now. And in some cases, I might offer them the choice of purchasing a new equipment to swap in there at a convenient time. So I put that all up on the table for them and let them know what's going on. But I have a couple of boxes of switches and routers that are still somewhat functional. I know I have a couple of them where I have labels on them about what is wrong with it. It might be port number 4 doesn't work, and so that I could use it for other purposes for troubleshooting. There's been times like when somebody decides they want to repurpose an office, and instead of a single person in our office, it's going to have 2 people now. So we need to set up another computer in there. So I might even repurpose a router to be used as a switch temporarily to get that up and running.
It's just as a loaner, as a stopgap.
Yeah,
you know,
loaner.
I do the exact same thing. But at the same time, if there is something wrong with it, I mean, I understand the importance of labeling it, because we work on so many things that all start getting like it's put in a blender. But if something's wrong with it, I don't see any point in keeping it unless it's a very, very unique or expensive piece of hardware. This stuff has gotten so cheap. Now, I don't have any clients running 2.5 or 10 gigabit. Do you?
No.
So
gigabit is the fastest I have.
Yeah, and so gigabit's been around so long, and I know I couldn't have predicted that, but you know, they're still essentially using gigabit switches that are no better performing than this from, you know, however many years ago. This has got to be 20 years old, if not very close to it. And you know, Netgear, they're built like a tank. This whole thing is made of metal, and that sort of gives me anyway a kind of a false sense of quality or robustness. The fact of the matter is the circuit boards inside are irrelevant to what's going on there, to what material the case is made from. But I've always been drawn to the Netgear switches because they just seem to be much better made. And that's psychology for you, right? Because at the end of the day, whether the case is plastic or metal wouldn't have prevented this problem from occurring.
Yeah. Well, I went to look up in that client's records, and I typed in a couple things trying to search for that record. The problem is when I look for switches on there, that client's been with me for 29 years.
Wow.
So there's a lot of stuff in there.
Sure.
And I didn't find it quickly, but I did just, I I don't know that that one was Netgear, but I see a 2014 date where we were dealing with some speed issues. I'm not sure if that was that incident or not. It seems like it was more recent than that. In fact, I'm sure
So
it was. Yeah. Go
Solo
ahead.
in the chat says, I just bought a TP link. I'll have to swap it out if it acts up in the future. There's nothing particular about TP link that would make it more prone, in my opinion, whether it's any manufacturer. You get a bad product from time to time, even though it could be nothing to do with the product's fault. You could have had a power brownout or outage that you're not even aware of that damaged it. So, certainly nothing specific. I would not avoid using TP-Link. The good side of it is that TP-Link is a budget brand. So the good news is if it happens out of warranty, it's not as big of a loss potentially than, like one of these Asus $450 mesh routers. I think this TP-Link router was $60. It's really cheap.
Yeah.
And a good excuse to upgrade it anyway, get better, go to tri-band and better range, etc. So we try to find the silver lining when these things happen, not just fix it, but make it better than it was before.
I don't have any reluctance to TP-Link. What do you got there? I'm wanting to upgrade the BIOS on my main board, but don't know what I'm doing. Have a very vague idea. What are some easy, simple steps to follow so I don't trash my main board?
So we're taking questions, your technical questions in the chat room. This one comes from Ed's Workouts. What advice do you have for Ed's Workouts?
Well, follow the instructions from wherever you're getting the BIOS upgrade.
Follow the instructions.
Read the instructions.
Well, I've got a number of videos where I demonstrate updating the BIOS live, and I show you how I locate the BIOS from the manufacturer's website, put it onto a small flash drive formatted in FAT32, and go into the current BIOS and follow the procedure. There are manufacturers, the four big ones, ASRock, MSI, Gigabyte, and Asus, all have a slightly different way of doing it, but they're all also slightly the same. And what you can do is simply type the make and model of your motherboard. So let's say you've got an ASRock something motherboard with the words update space BIOS here on YouTube in the search. And likely there is a content creator that has done that walkthrough. The only real danger that I would warn you about is a power outage while you're updating the BIOS. If you live somewhere where the power, where you frequently have power outages, you definitely want to be on an uninterruptible power supply when you do it. The process shouldn't take more than about 3 minutes. I very rarely have power outages here at Studio B, so I don't worry about it. I throw the dice.
Yeah, I agree. I don't worry about possible power outage, but I'm still in searching YouTube for a BIOS update from a content creator. I would still encourage a person, particularly since they're self-identifying as don't know what they're doing, read the directions when you get to the place for downloading the BIOS, because we don't know that that content creator was showing every step of the process. When you, Carey Holzman, do a BIOS update on a video, you're pretty much showing it's not edited. But if you go search for a BIOS update from a content creator, you don't know what they've edited out. So for a person, especially when they're self-identifying as they don't know what they're doing, read the directions. Now, I don't always do that because I'm pretty comfortable with updating BIOS. And when I'm doing it, it's typically a major brand computer. In Carey's world, it's typically a custom build computer. So that's a little different environment. I find it very easy with the pre-built computers, HP, Dell, or whatever, that usually the BIOS update is being handled through Windows Update, and it's a nothing burger. But I have come to occasions where I go manually install an update for some reason or another. That would usually be if I'm dealing with a computer that's a few years old and the particular BIOS update it at the BIOS level it's at right now, it doesn't provide for or allow for BIOS updates through Windows. So when I get it up to a certain point then of BIOS version, then future BIOS updates from that major manufacturer will update through Windows Update.
Yeah, so I see that especially with laptops because, obviously we're not building our own laptops. I don't tell people to refer to the manual because when I read the manual, even I have difficulty understanding some of the stuff they're talking about.
I'm not saying the manual. What I'm referring to is when you go to the place on the motherboard manufacturer's website for downloading the BIOS update, there should be some directions there. I care
So
more
typically
about
when you
that.
download the file will be a zip and in it will be like readme.txt or
Yeah.
instructions.txt.
Yeah.
Even those I find to be, if I was a non-techie, I would find certain things they say to be, what do they mean by this? So I'd rather show somebody because that's how I learn better if somebody shows me. But obviously, if you're somebody where you don't have that issue with understanding the instructions, by all means, read them anyway, because you're not going to know if you understand. You shouldn't just assume, like I just did, that the instructions are always universally bad. And they can contain critical information, like they're, especially on AMD boards, you might be spinning around in circles following my video to a T, except the BIOS you downloaded has a prerequisite of a minimum BIOS that you didn't read about, and you can't figure out why it's not working.
Yeah. And I wouldn't discourage somebody from looking at YouTube videos. I think those are great. And I do that. I go search YouTube often for whatever I'm trying to work on. Now, and there also might be a different, it sounds like you and I have different experiences in terms of downloading BIOS from the manufacturer, probably because I'm dealing with the major manufacturers. And
Yeah, those are
with
easy.
the motherboards. Yeah, they're easy. They're usually not a big deal. And it's very rare that a person even needs to go to a Dell or HP site for a BIOS update, but I've had occasion to do it.
Yeah. Like you said, it's very rare. Very few people are upgrading those machines. So in order to have compatibility with other processors or other RAM manufacturers, a BIOS update may be required. But with the system integrators like Dell, HP, all the pre-builts, a lot of the BIOS features are locked out anyway that you would have if you were to build your own.
Yeah. Okay, so another troubleshooting story came to my mind as we were talking. You ready?
Love it.
Okay.
Oops, I didn't mean to go me full screen. There, floor is yours.
All right. So client calls me that their video surveillance system, they can't log into it from outside the office. What they mean by that is they, on their smartphones, they're able to connect to the video surveillance system at their office to be able to check on things. And in their particular business, they need to be able to do that. The managers and owners of the company need to be able to do that. So I have it set up on my smartphone, so I try it, and yes, indeed, I cannot get to it either. So then I connect remotely to one of their computers to see if we can get to it from their computers, because they didn't tell me whether they could do that or not. And I find that, no, I can't get to it from their computers. So now I'm wondering, is the video surveillance system completely down? They have disconnected their monitors from the video surveillance system, so they can't just look at a screen and see if it's working. So I go to the office. There's it's rack mounted. I have to use a ladder to get up to it. There's no monitor connected to it, so I bring in a long HDMI cable, connect the surveillance VCR device to the monitor of the user's computer that's at that desk. And the screen comes up, I can see it, it is up and running and just fine. So what's going on? This is connected by Ethernet cable to their network. So I take and let's see, I want to get this piece right. The Ethernet cable that's coming to the device, I can't run it all the way down to a computer to test that connection. So I take an Ethernet cable from the wall outlet that is servicing the computer for the person in that office, run that Ethernet cable up to the video surveillance computer, and it comes alive. And we can connect to it from computers, we can connect to it from outside the office from the smartphones. So now I'm thinking there's something about that Ethernet cable that's connecting. So let's see, the next piece there, I want to test that cable or replace it. Oh, I remember. I go to the switch, the network switch, which is in a supply room into the warehouse behind a locked door, and it's also rack mounted for this network switch. Then this network switch used to be in the same rack that the VCR is in, the surveillance VCR. So identify which port is for that device by having somebody, I'm on a cell phone with a person over in the office, and I have them connect and disconnect so I can figure out which light it is. And I find that the light is turning on and off. So when they plug in that Ethernet cable to the surveillance device, the light comes on the switch, telling me that it is live, it is connected there. I test that port on the Ethernet switch with my laptop, and it's functional. So now what's going on? I think I must have done this. I must have taken my laptop to the surveillance computer side of that Ethernet run, and my laptop got an internet signal. It works. The Ethernet line seems to be working. So now what's going on? I'll pause here and see if you have speculations.
So we have whittled out the switch, the cable.
Bring yourself on screen
Oh, sorry.
so we can see how hard you're thinking.
We have so just to summarize, we've whittled out the port on the switch is fine, cable's fine, appears to be. I assume everything's been turned off and back on again.
Yeah, and the
cameras
surveillance equipment does work. Once we used the Ethernet to a different outlet, it worked.
So for grins and giggles, I would have tried a different switch just for the sake of it. Maybe it's a flaky port on the switch.
Let me stop you right there because it's an unfair question. It's an unfair question.
Well, that's all right.
Because there's a piece that you don't. So I go up higher on the ladder. There's a acoustic tile ceiling, and that's where this Ethernet line is running up to. Now remember that this rack that's mounted high on a wall that has a surveillance system in it, the switch used to be mounted in that rack. They have moved it to another room since the last time that I had been in the office. And I asked them, once you had that new switch over there, did you verify that you could access the surveillance system from outside the office through your smartphone? He couldn't say that with certainty. So I figured, okay, that's a non-answer. So I lift this ceiling tile up, and the Ethernet line goes up even higher, a couple more feet up over a level in an area that I can't see. So now I'm sticking my cell phone up there because I want to see the route of that wire going to that Ethernet switch. And what I find is that wire and several others halfway between this inner office to that storage room, there are butt splice connectors connecting the ends of Ethernet cables.
Couplers?
Couplers, yeah.
Okay.
So they've got couplers up there. So this is something I never rely on. It's just
Yeah, well, somebody
not
was
acceptable.
cutting corners.
Yeah, they were cutting corners, and I wound up having a conversation with that person later, and I have an explanation for the cutting corners. But so I figured that's what's going on. It's just not a good enough connection. My laptop briefly, for the period of my test, said that it has internet connection, but it's not good enough for all these the bandwidth that all these security cameras are
How
using.
long would you estimate that run was in total?
Yeah, in total, probably 50, 60 feet
Oh, was that
with
all?
two segments. Not terribly long. Um,
Did you notice a drop when you connected with your laptop? Did it connect at gigabit speed?
I don't think I even checked. I think
Okay.
probably all I did was enough to see that I've got an internet connection indicated. I don't even know if I opened a browser window.
And so
So we did for a temporary solution. I think what I did is I suspect I typically carry long enough cable. So did I throw it? I'm questioning whether did. This is a couple years ago. Somehow I got it up and running. Um,
with a different
I
cable?
got with either with a different cable or maybe it was from having a conversation. No. Here's what it is. This is memories coming back. This was not a mission critical thing. They wanted to be able to see the security cameras, but obviously they hadn't even tried it for maybe a couple weeks. I don't know how long it had been since that change was made. They got me on the phone with the guy who did those cable runs, and he said, and there were some other really funky things about the cabling, some connectors that weren't right, some other little um, shorter joints. So I got on the phone with him, and he said, "Yeah, we didn't have all of the equipment that we needed, so I just got it by, and I know I need to come back out and fix the rest of that up." So it was just a thing where some reason I don't know why they even moved the equipment to that other room. Yes, I do. That network switch has a fan in it, makes some noise, not bad. It was running fine, and there was a new person in that inner office that didn't like it, and she was a daughter of the owner of the company, so she gets what she wants. That's why they moved
Did
it.
they
And
did they move it themselves, or did they like have a security company that installed their cameras that came out and did that?
it was either the security company or the IP phone company that did that.
So they
So
didn't
it's
actually,
somebody who no, the company themselves, they didn't do it.
and so they
It
had
was
to hire you to fix with the company, the other company they hired.
well, to determine what the trouble was. Then the other company came out and actually fixed it because they didn't know that it was that person's fault.
Fair enough.
And I think also they knew that my troubleshooting skills would be better for that than the person who did that wiring because they're not computer people. They
No,
are it's
not
either
usually.
IP phones or the security people. So this company turns to me for troubleshooting type thing, and that's another. I don't know how long that they may be 18, 28, 29 year client as well.
Nice. It's nice that you have several of them that have been with you that long.
Oh, I do. I do.
I had a client in another state. Very rarely hear from them. They have a building with 2 floors. They have all of their networking equipment on a rack mounted to the wall, one of those little like 3-foot tall racks that's got a door and a lock
Right.
on it.
Right.
And in there, they've got their cable modem or fiber modem, whatever the thing is called. They've got their switch, they've got their NAS. It's all locked in this box. And I was looking at something, and I noticed that when I was working and I'm checking the speeds, and all the computers on the first floor are at 100 megabit connections. All the computers on the second floor are at gigabit, but it's a gigabit switch. And it's not one computer on the first floor, it's every computer. Now, I've seen this before where people have an IP phone, a VoIP phone, and they plug the VoIP phone into the Ethernet connection in the wall, and they take a short cable to go from the back of the phone into the computer. And I've seen where these phones, they don't want to spend the money to buy newer phones, and the phones are only at 100 megabit. So anything connected to the back of the phone is only going to get 100 megabit. So my first thought is, you got some old phones. They say, no, we just got these phones last year. So I end up not being unable to solve the problem, but I was in that state and stopped in because I wanted to see it in person. This is why I'm saying, when you were describing the problem and you said it was kind of an unfair question, what I was about to say was I'm having trouble picturing how this is set up in my mind. So I go to the building and I'm verifying everything. I disconnect the phone, plug it directly into the back of the computer. Still 100 megabits per second connection speed, and the phones are in fact a gigabit. They say so right on the back. So I'm like, all right, so, I'm studying the switch. I have to go upstairs where the switch is and checking all the cables, making sure they're all seated correctly. The condition of the cables, are they handmade cables? Are they, of course they're handmade cables because they run the runs down the walls, and in this case they don't have a patch panel for whatever reason. They just ran it directly. So I'm baffled. I'm absolutely baffled. And the business owner says, hey, could this be it? And he's on the first floor in the employee break room on top of the cabinets over the sink. You can't see there's another switch because the cabinets, the top of the cabinets is recessed. It goes down about an inch. So when I'm looking up, I don't see anything on top of the cabinets. So I stand on top of the counter like I used to do when I was a kid, trying to get something out of the kitchen cabinets because, short. And so there's this 50-year-old man climbing up on a counter, and there's the same switch that they have upstairs. And you can see the lines, all the lines going up through a hole in the ceiling into what is directly above that rack mounted. It's mounted to a wall, this rack. And I'm scratching my head going, why did they do this way? They only needed to run one cable to bridge these two together, or they should have put this switch upstairs and ran all the cables together. I said, it would have helped if I would have known there was another switch here. So I go on Amazon, I order a switch that could be delivered the next day because I'm on a tight schedule here and I'm only in town a couple days. The switch comes in, I replace it. Everything's gigabit now, except now they can't print to certain printers. So I'm banging my head, trying all this different networking commands and resets, and I can't solve it. And then it occurs to me, the switch I was able to get is just a no-name brand switch. It needed power over Ethernet to power the phones, and it had to have a certain number of ports. So I more or less had one option. On the front of the switch, I noticed when I was buying it, the pictures, this switch had a little physical switch on it that slides left and right. It's a really tiny little switch on the face of the network switch. On one side it says S, on the other side it says V. So the V, and I remember noting this when I was purchasing it, the V is for creating a virtual LAN that somehow the switch does internally. I'm not exactly sure. It's not even a real VLAN anyway, so who needs that? And when I was installing it, I made a mental note, make sure that switch is in the S position, and I assumed that's how it would be default out of the box. So I go back over to the clients, I get back up on that counter and I look at the switch after I was pulling my hair out and feeling like a complete idiot because I wasn't able to figure it out. I noticed the switch was next to the V. I slid the switch over to S. Everything's been fine ever since. I'm like, what a stupid feature to have on it. So there was a switch on the switch. The VLAN was confusing because it was allowing the computers to apparently work, but when they tried to print to some printers that were on the virtual side of the switch, it wasn't making the connection.
Yeah. I have not come across a switch a switch that has a switch for VLAN. And I was just speculating on how that works. Does it take all the ports on that switch and make them a virtual LAN with each other, and then bridge over to whatever else you're connected to? That's
It's
or is there a certain port on the switch that affects?
it
Uh,
apparently like did certain number of ports would be on the
yeah,
VLAN, like half of the switch would be on the VLAN and half of the
yeah.
switch wouldn't. And I'm trying to find it on Amazon, and it was just absolutely maddening. It wasn't like a dip switch. It was a physical sliding
Yeah,
switch
got it.
right on the front. In fact, I think I just found it. Let me see if I can share my screen here. If I can remember. Whoops. I have to remember how to do it.
And I'm suspecting the printer had a static IP address.
Uh, I think if it didn't, I set it with one, but I was able to, determine what the printer IP address was and to physically change it to see if it was conflicting with another printer or another, something on the network that had the same IP. If it is hard coded, you know what I mean? And then somebody else hard coded something else with the same IP address, you get all kinds of weird problems sometimes.
Yeah.
But let me see if I can share this screen, which is right. Okay, this should work. If I go to properties, change that. And okay. So you see the switch? Oh,
There, yes.
you see the little switch right there?
Yeah.
I might have to go full screen on StreamYard here. Bear with me for just one more minute. Let me go full screen. And then you can see this better. Yeah, it was very similar to this. I think it had to have 16 ports, but it had this little tiny switch right up front.
Off and on for the VLAN. So turned off
Yes,
is on this
but
case is
it's
what you would want.
but it's not a real VLAN. That's the thing. Like, I don't understand what purpose this could possibly serve. And boy, this really threw me, I got to tell you. And it was something when I purchased it, I was aware of, and I made a mental note, but I should have written it down because then I completely forgot. And it's some, name brand I've never heard of before. I could
Yeah.
get it overnight. It was like $400, I want to say. It wasn't exactly the cheapest, but the name brand ones were even more money, and they were like 4 weeks out because we're at this time still dealing with the pandemic distribution issues. And I remember looking at the reviews about that and seeing what people had to say about the VLAN, and people were ticked off about this virtual VLAN. It's like a VVLAN, and
Yeah.
how it didn't make any sense that even if you had a use for it, it wasn't done properly, and I just kicked myself because I think if I would have just the minute I got that, opened it up and checked it and got it out of the way so that when I took it over to the customer's place, it would be ready to plug in. I just assumed that the default would be on the standard mode, not on the VLAN mode. But no, out of the box, I confirmed right out of the box, it's set to the V position. How messed up is that?
Yeah. Well, I saw some of the things in that advertisement there. It looked like they were marketing it to for like security cameras and smart speakers and things like that. That you'd want them isolated from the rest from your computer network.
Yeah, but that's really not the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that. I can't
I'd like to
imagine
see
that's
them having a label.
a
Go ahead.
label.
A label on the device. Check the VLAN switch. It's like some devices will have a label on them to connect the battery on a UPS. And they'll have the power outlets covered over with this sticker.
Yeah, so you have no
Tell you
choice
what
but
to
to deal
do.
with the label to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would cost too much money apparently.
Well, I'm wondering if maybe they would learn the lesson through how much trouble does it cause them to in support calls, people calling them with complaints. So
I don't know that you
maybe they
could
would.
call them,
Oh, that brand name, yeah, probably not.
right? Maybe
It's,
maybe
it's a
email
little
them.
bit
I don't
different.
know, but I was on a time crunch. I mean, I just thought I was
Yeah.
going to plug this in and be a genius, put my cape on and be the hero of the day.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, let me know if there's any problems. And then I get a call and I'm like, there's no way they're still having problems. And then I was like, what is this? So this particular customer, when they call, I get the hairs on the back of my neck stand up because I'm like, they won't call with anything simple and they don't
Yeah.
know enough to be able to explain it very well. And it's so much easier if I just go on site and I can see it. But that hidden switch, yeah. And now they just bought like the whole back half of the building and they have this anxiety about, am I running out of space on my network? Is this going to be okay? I'm like, you're adding like 4 more offices. I said, all you got to do, you don't have to pay somebody to run those lines from that office to the next office and upstairs. Just have them all run to a switch and then just run a single cable from that switch to either the switch downstairs or upstairs, whichever one you want. The only problem with that, of course, is if anything happens to that port on that switch or that one cable, those 4 computers and phone lines on that side,
Right.
they're all being connected with one, essentially a bridge. But I told him he's really got a lot of anxiety about it. And I'm like, it's nothing. Don't even worry about it. And it was an office before he rented it. So it's not like it wasn't like it was a big warehouse and now they have to build it out. Likely there's already network cables run and they're all going to be running somewhere together. And all you got to do is go from wherever they are now, run a single line, easy peasy. But yeah, problems like that and problems like the one you just described, I can't put the emphasis on how important it is for those kind of problems for me to be on site.
Yeah. That triggered a memory for me when you're talking about the runs that they would go to somewhere. I had a client that was moving to a new office. They asked me to go out and check out the new space before they move in. And I asked them some preliminary questions about Ethernet wall jacks. And they said, yeah, it looks like there's wall jacks here. And so I went out to look at it and I wanted to find, where do they all go to? Where is the equipment room? Turned out it was in somebody else's office on the other side of the building.
Yep.
And come to find out what happened is my client going into this office, what somebody had done is they put in a new wall where this office used to go from the front side of the building to the back side of the building with entrance doors on both sides. Now they put a wall in between them to cut them up into be 2 offices. My client was going into the office where the Ethernet lines did not run to, so they were running to the other office. And actually, now that I'm putting some memory fragments together, they called me after they moved in because
Did
there
you
were
know they were
issues.
moving?
Um, I can't swear to that. This was many years ago now. I'm suspecting that I knew, but we were, perhaps told that all the wiring is there, and they accepted that. And actually, okay, now another piece coming in. They were functional. They were up and running and functional, and they knew when I arrived that the wires all went into the other office. So in order to fix whatever the problem was at that time, as I had to go into that other office and be shown to where the equipment was. Well, this equipment room was the boss's inner office on that side, and there was some pieces of furniture. There was one router behind one of them, kind of down sandwiched between this piece of furniture and the wall. There was another router over there. There's a switch down here and a switch over there and wires going all crazy. I couldn't tell which of those were my clients. connections
Yikes.
until I start disconnecting things. And of course, their offices walk all the way around the building, go into the other side to figure it out.
That would be a real big security concern that I would alert the other people about. I'd say, hey, you guys should have this locked away so nobody can spy on you, or, make them at least aware that it's not ideal to be sharing. I had a very similar situation, and then I was later accused of basically spying on them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why would I spy on you? Like, you think I have nothing else better to do? You think you're that important? You're not even my client. My client's on the first floor. You're on the second floor. I don't work for you. But the idea that they saw me in that room doing work, they had it in their head. I was being hired by the client on the first floor, who was the landlord, to spy on the tenant on the second floor. It was only in one room on the second floor. And I was like, no, if you got a problem, you take it up with the landlord. I did what I was paid to do. There's nothing you do I'm interested in, nor is the landlord interested in it. And I'm not going to continue the discussion. I'm offended and insulted. How dare you? And this is kind of when I'm kind of drawing the board, when they have this one main wiring room. So controls for the elevator are in there, the phone system's in there, the alarm system's in there, and the network is in there. And they had their own ISP line coming into that room, as did my customer. So they had a DSL modem upstairs, and they had their own modem downstairs. So this is back in the late 90s, early 2000s when this happened. And that scares me, since I've had that negative experience. If I encounter two different companies sharing a wiring room or sharing networking equipment, I will pretty much wash my hands of it and say, yeah, I'm not going to touch it unless I work for both of them.
Yeah.
And and then recently had a client that wanted to intentionally put his network onto the other business's network, different client. And I was like, I won't have anything to do with that. They thought they were going to save money using equipment that was already there, that the other party invited them to. And I'm like, I can't secure you anymore. If I can't secure you, I don't want to be held liable for what could happen. So I said, if you want to pursue that, you'll have to hire somebody else. Needless to say, I don't work for them anymore.
Mm-hmm. The one that I was talking about, we did wind up separating the wiring.
Yeah,
Yes,
good.
for the same reasons that you're describing. No.
It's sort of like the mechanic, when you had a mechanic fixes something, and then something completely unrelated breaks shortly thereafter. So the last one who touched it caused that. You just changed oil in my car, and now my tire is flat. So you owe me a tire. What? So it's all well and good and everybody's happy until there's a problem. And then the imagination gets going with no evidence and just start finger pointing and make the accusations. And I won't tolerate that disrespect. It's just so offensive to me. So like I say, if both clients are my client and I have control over it, I would still want to separate them, but I'd be more willing to take that liability on. But if they've got other people going in that room and it's jeopardizing my client, that could result in a support call where I have to come out and undo what that person did, I want nothing to do with that. I want that room locked, and I only want authorized personnel in there, not some tenant sending their tech person down into that room that could potentially take my client completely offline in the process of getting whatever they needed done. What a nightmare. I'm looking in the chat. If you guys have any questions for us, we'll be happy to take your question. We're going to be running about close to 90 minutes already, so we'll probably wrap this up here within the next 20 minutes. I let you know that, so if you're hesitating or doubting whether or not to ask your question, the time is ticking, and we'd be happy to entertain any question you have. Beyond that, if you're looking in the future for some technical help, well, Doug's channel is the place to be. Tell them what you do on your channel, Doug.
Yeah, oh, great, great, thanks. I was hoping that you would let me do that because what I'm trying to make out of this YouTube channel is I think unique and different than what I see elsewhere is to provide uh, right now kind of support for whatever questions person might have, whether a person whether it's an end user or a technician who's looking, for people to give them some other ideas. I'm doing a series currently called Windows Daily. It's Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, where I'm interacting with the chat room, and I take questions by email or in the chat room even before the show starts, or on video comments that have been on my other videos. I'll bring them to that forum. And the idea behind that is so that somebody can get an instant response, a right now response to whatever they've got going on. Now that also includes the capability to connect remotely to their computer or bring them into a Zoom session, so we can have a conversation. And that's the piece that I'm saying is unique. It's not so unique that somebody can ask a question in chat and get a response, but that you can actually come in and have an audio conversation with me, or be on camera if you want to, and I can connect remotely to your computer. On Saturdays, it's very similar but longer form content. Saturdays is typically around 2 hours. The Monday through Friday, I typically keep down to about 30 minutes. But what I really want to make this is an environment where people know they can, if they got an issue that they're working with right now, maybe they're just up against a brick wall and a little bit of a barrier, and they need some suggestions to break them out of that, come in and talk with myself and the others that are in the chat room, some very capable people in the chat room, and we'll come in to the Zoom session and have conversations about whatever's going on. We get into some interesting topics and fix some issues. And it's not always me coming up with a fix. I'm very, very easy to acknowledge the different capabilities and backgrounds and skill sets of the people who participate in my channel, just like in your channel, Carey. You've got a wide mix of participants.
Yes. Well, did you ever belong to a computer club back in the day?
Yes, that was a substantial source in my cutting my teeth in the computer industry before I worked as a computer technician, before I got promoted to run my boss's business off of computers. That's where I started my learnings.
When the idea with the computer club was users helping users. And I think that's essentially what you and I are keeping alive, because the computer clubs have mostly, well, if they weren't dead before, certainly the pandemic discouraged any gathering of people. They usually would meet once a month. Now, back in the early days, we used to trade software. Back before the internet, back when people had Ataris, Commodores, TRS-80s, and Apple IIs, that's how things got distributed. Even Bill Gates, I remember, went to a computer club and said, "Please stop pirating DOS. you're killing me. You're killing my finances." But that was just considered normal. There was no ill will. It was just people sharing and people helping resolve issues. And like on my Atari 400, there was a way to exceed the maximum allowed installed RAM from like 32K to 48K. It was kind of a kludge, and it required a soldering iron and some parts. And I didn't have the confidence to do it, but there was a guy in the computer club that loved doing it. He did it for free. He's like, "Just give me the computer and the parts, I'll do the work." Now, what can you do with 16 more K of RAM that no software is designed to use because it goes above what the system can, actually be upgraded to? Well, you made a RAM drive out of it. So super fast access to files. And what's great about what you're doing is you have real people, unscripted, unedited, live. I've seen you're inviting people to join you over, visually, just like what we're doing right now. You can have, I don't know, you've had upwards of 10 people in there, if not more.
Over.
What's the maximum number of people you've had on at the same
I,
time?
I'm sure I've had 12, may have gone up as high as, I want to say maybe 15 or 16, definitely not more over that. I'm not sure if we got up to that. And I'm not really striving to get a big number because we want people to be able to talk. And yeah,
But who else does this? I don't know anybody else that's going to allow you as a viewer to, I mean, you're essentially sharing your YouTube channel with them. You're allowing them on
yeah,
stage with
yeah,
you. And it's a very generous thing. A lot of people are very, um, this is my stage. You're watching me. I'm not watching you. But I like how it's not required. If people want to, they
yeah,
often can. And of course, they're always welcome to hang out in the chat as we do here, ask questions. Oftentimes you're on much earlier. When you're on, I'm usually still asleep. So we don't necessarily compete against
yeah,
one another. So if you're a viewer and you want the best of both worlds, you don't have to choose between us. You can enjoy
yeah.
both channels. And if you haven't, I would suggest and highly recommend subscribe to Doug's channel. The link for it is in the video notes below this video. And you can look back on it and say, I remember when I joined Doug's channel, it was only this big and now it's this big. And, every once in a while you'll see somebody, like even here, somebody says, I've been subscribed to you, Carey, since 2008 or something, which is when
Yeah.
I started my YouTube channel. And it's just kind of a cool thing to brag about when you're there early. Also, you get to know the content creator much, much better. When things get popular, there's more noise and there's
Right.
more people wanting attention. And well, I would love to be able to equally share my time individually with my viewers. The ones that I remember mostly are the ones that have been with me the longest, just because attrition, I'm just
Sure.
familiar.
Sure.
And as an example, what is a problem that a viewer had that you helped resolve on your channel recently?
Oh, now oftentimes the problems are very, very small or minor. So one example is Josh had a problem with his aunt got a notice for an update for Macrium Reflect, and there was something that was a little bit strange about the update for that. I'm not saying that quite right. He had his aunt on a standard user rights, and so she couldn't install the update. So
Oh,
he connected remotely to her computer, logged in with his admin credentials to do the update, and then he got some kind of error message. Well, now it turned we had some conversations, I think, through chat, and there's another kind of a spin-off channel from my channel, Ken Stout Live, that does Zoom sessions, but he doesn't keep it strictly to tech topics, and they had some conversations there about it. So that one got resolved. What was another one recently? I'm drawing a blank. Somebody came up with a question about why does the dir command show a different amount of free space than checkdisk does. If you do checkdisk, it shows a certain amount of free space. Show the dir command, it shows a different amount of free space. And we together, the community together in Saturday's live stream, which was yesterday, we found the explanation for that. We did the math and show how it works. And it had to do with, let's see, system reserved space. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. And then there was also
we're
the
talking about storage, not RAM, right? You're talking
store,
about,
yeah, storage.
and this is strictly within the DOS window, or?
Yeah, in a DOS window, if you do a dir command, and it gives you a report of how much free space. If you do a checkdisk command, it gives you an amount of free space in kilobytes. Well, it's not just the math of converting kilobytes to bytes. There is still a difference, and it had to do with system reserved files, not memory. Somebody in chat's going
So
to
this
tell us
example
what
isn't
that
really
was.
solving any
It
problem.
wasn't solving a problem. It was answering a technical curiosity. And a
Yeah,
lot of
I got
times the
you.
things that we get involved in are technical curiosities. And like I mentioned before, the community knows that's a Doug thing.
I had someone shared an interesting story with me that I was fascinated with. Person says they were logged into their bank, they were doing something, and the bank said, "It appears you have TeamViewer installed. Is this, are you initiating this transfer?" And they're like, "But I wasn't using TeamViewer. How would the bank know that I had TeamViewer when I wasn't even using it?" Well, it turns out TeamViewer installs a TeamViewer font. And when you go to a website, the website reports, it collects what browser you're using, what version of the browser, what your IP address is, and what fonts you have installed. So the browser can display the website properly. So it appears TeamViewer fingerprints when you install TeamViewer by adding their own font called TeamViewer font, which may look identical, for all I know, to your standard system font. And simply by the website querying for the standard information, they could tell TeamViewer was installed on that system. And when I talk to people about security and how they don't understand, they can't wrap their mind around, doesn't the antivirus protect me? Doesn't the firewall protect me? Don't these Windows updates protect me? There's things like this, which are a prime example where there's nothing the antivirus can do, there's nothing Windows updates is going to do, and there's nothing your firewall is going to do. This is a proper procedure for a legitimate reason that you have no clue. Most people have no clue this is what's going on, including me. I didn't know until this was a Reddit discussion that was brought to my attention. And I'm like, oh, well, what else don't I know about what information is being collected when I visit a website? That's a little freaky.
Yeah, yeah, it is. As you were describing that, I was wondering, is that maybe a technique that TeamViewer uses to help them identify people who are using TeamViewer for commercial purposes? Because they've put a lot of effort into trying to, clamp down on that. And
I,
I had a client who was doing exactly that. I had them on a log me in subscription for connecting remotely to their computers. New partner comes into the company. He's given the full reign to manage the business and make decisions, and he drops the log me in subscription and starts using TeamViewer free for obviously commercial purposes for them working from home. That is specifically stated in TeamViewer's fine print. And I told him about this. I advised him about it, and he just shined me on and kept doing it. I wound up firing that client.
I'm sure eventually they got, TeamViewer's like, this appears to be used for commercial purposes and
Yeah,
your connection will end in 3 minutes and you'll have to wait 10 minutes before you can connect again. I mean, they
yeah,
do it falsely enough. I'm sure it was just a
yeah.
matter of time that was coming. Um, what remote software do you prefer when you
Well,
have to connect to a client remotely?
yeah. I use Log Me and Rescue. It's a technician's license. It's pretty expensive. Now I also had um, Instant House Call. I was using both of them, and I'm sorry to report I found that Instant House Call didn't perform nearly as well as Log Me and Rescue.
Well, they
Um,
came out with a new version of, not to turn this into a sales pitch, but I like Corey Fruitman, the owner and founder.
yeah,
And now version 7.1 or 7.0.1, it's fast. It's
yeah,
very fast and it's very affordable. And you can get a free trial. And if you're afraid that, well, because you're a prior customer, you may not get the free one, you can email Corey and say, hey, can I try this again?
I,
It might
I
be worth another look.
yeah, I like Corey. I had the license for I don't know well over a year. I got it at the beginning of COVID, figuring that what really attracted me was being able to provide that to my clients so that they could use that to connect because LogMeIn was pretty expensive for my clients and they had certain um, user increments. And so when you go from the first level, it allows 2 host computers, and then I think the next jump was up to like 5 users, and that was pretty stiff.
Have any idea what
Amount.
what that cost is on that these days?
Yeah, I don't recollect. I want to say it's $200 or $300 a year.
Well, that's not bad. It used to be $100 a month.
Log me in.
Yeah, log me in rescue.
Rescue. Yeah, rescue. I think it's more like $1,600 a year.
So with instant house call, much cheaper. And on our higher end, you can resell remote access to your customers that's uniquely theirs.
Yeah, I did.
So in other words, oh, you were doing that.
I did.
See, I didn't
I
even
did
know
do
you
that.
could do
I
that
did get
until I
that.
had.
And that's what attracted me to it. But I just didn't have enough clients that came on board with that. And because of the number of computers that I have already set up on Log Me and Rescue Me, or Rescue Technician, I know that price tag sounds high to people who aren't in the business, but I think I make money hand over fist with it. And I just don't want to go change all those computers.
I completely get it.
It can't be as good as Log Me and Rescue and cheaper. It'd have to be way over. So let's drop that. I like Corey. I like the concept of instant house call.
No, I completely get where you're coming from. And I completely understand. I have people that, they can't lose their phone number, for example, or they might be reluctant to upgrade a machine because they don't have the software they need that's on it and they don't know where to get it. So they'll keep that machine around specifically for that purpose. It totally makes sense. Only reason I bring it up is the new version might be worth looking at, might be good as an emergency backup. I don't know how often you've ever experienced, or if ever, that perhaps the Log Me In service is down and you need to connect. So having a little backup remote access. But I was just mentioning it, and Log Me In is an excellent product. They just upset a lot of people when they took away the free version and said, you got to pay now. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'll take a quick look here in the chat and see if we've missed any questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Are you aware that I have a second YouTube channel?
No. Tell us about that.
I stream Fortnite gameplay every day.
Oh, you play Fortnite?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
I've never been into computer games at all prior to that.
Do you have they're asking, Chris Kelly wants to know if you have a preference of Intel or AMD.
Intel.
So you openly have you picked a side.
But I can't defend it. I have absolutely no hesitation if a client wants AMD. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, I just prefer Intel because I understand their processor naming convention, and I don't understand AMD as well. And particularly back in the past with vertical market software for clients, I had come across some that in their requirements said they require Intel. I haven't seen that for quite some time, but that's part of what got me in that line. So I would not argue against anybody else who favors AMD. If a client wants it, that's fine.
Yeah, we all have our opinions, and they're as legitimate as everybody else's. Find Me in Hawaii asks, is it better to use Microsoft Edge as a PDF reader versus Adobe? What do you think?
Oh, I prefer Adobe Acrobat Reader, hands down. Now, ask me to defend that. How do I go about defending it?
Well, I would imagine there's not going to be any potential formatting errors when you're using Adobe. Although I haven't run into any problems. I don't really use PDFs very often.
When I come across a client who has their default PDF set to Edge, I do not make any move to change it. That's what they're accustomed to. Now, I have
Right.
had clients who are accustomed to Adobe Acrobat Reader, and they call me complaining that it's different. And when I check on it, I find that their default PDF has been switched to Edge. And so then I just switch it back for them. They tell me all these icons on their desktop look different now. Well, first of all, some people in the chat room are slapping their foreheads, realizing these people have PDF files stored on their desktop. Yes, they do. So I got to change their default back, and I'll occasionally suggest to them that I move those PDF files to be stored in a folder, and I'll put shortcuts on your desktop if you want them, rather than the actual file being stored on the desktop.
Right. Or at least make a folder and get some organization. It makes my OCD crawl.
Well, some of them respond with, "Oh no, please don't do that," and others say, "Oh gosh, yes." You just have no idea where their frame of mind is.
Well, and everybody's got their preferences. It's me like going into their car and adjusting their seat and mirrors to what you like.
Right.
It's just a bit disrespectful unless you were specifically asked to do it or you asked for permission before you did it. Forbin Colossus in the chat wants to know, is there any motherboard CPU recommendations for a premium build for graphics, some gaming, any Cyber Monday deals? Hey, that's a good question to end this out on. Have you done any cyber shopping? Found any good deals? This Black Friday?
No, and I have to say that is outside of my bailiwick because I don't build computers. So recommendations about motherboards and deals and such, that is a Carey Holzman question.
Yeah, and I'm not really watching too much on the aspect of motherboards and CPUs. I'm not seeing a whole lot of deals. I'm finding some real good deals on solid state drives, a lot of deals on monitors. There just seems to be the overkill on that. But as for CPU and motherboard, you really should have a consultation with somebody. That usually takes me an hour to 90 minutes before I can recommend anything to anybody. And of course, I charge for that. But otherwise, you can always ask folks in the chat room and always take any advice you're getting for free with a big grain of salt.
Yeah.
That's about the,
And
But listen, it's been great having you. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm glad to see you're still at it, still doing the YouTube thing. I've met a few people that started and then kind of faded out, I don't know, they lost interest. But clearly, Doug's been doing your YouTube channel now for how long?
Tony Wallow found some original Tech Tales videos from me on my personal channel showing 3 years ago, but I wasn't real regular then. That was starting out. So I've been real regular for, I think, a bit over a year now.
Yeah, and
it's got to be over a year.
No sign of slowing down. So you guys, I'm telling you.
Now,
if you enjoy.
Sorry, I want to get into piece before you shut us down. With my comment a moment ago that I don't build computers, I do have a custom built computer.
That's a beauty.
Here. Isn't that a beautiful computer?
That is a beauty.
I didn't build it though.
My back hurts just looking at it.
I did weigh it. I put it on a scale. I don't remember what the number came up to, but I have it. I took a picture of it. I got it somewhere.
Well, technically, it's 2 computers.
Yeah, 2 computers. 2 computers in one. What's that?
Yeah, 2 motherboards in that case,
or something like that.
So yes. I'm.
In case anybody doesn't know, Carey built that during several live streams with Mitch Morrison's assistance, and then when I went down to pick it up, I was on a live stream that's on Carey's channel too.
Yeah, I made about 9 videos out of that. The whole process, the big beast build, and that's the most expensive computer I've ever built on my channel. It was just the best of everything that I could think of. 8 terabyte NVMe storage. I think it was 128 gigs of RAM, or was it 256?
256.
256. That's insane.
I have had it up to 200 gigabytes in use.
Wow.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Yes.
Well, clearly wasn't an overkill purchase. You're using it. That delights me. It's meant to be used.
That happens during video rendering.
Al, any other final things you want to say before we say goodbye to the audience? Let them know how they can reach you, when you go live, things of that nature.
Yeah, I typically always have the next live stream scheduled. When I end one live stream, I'll schedule the next so that you can put questions into the chat room long before it comes up. So if you just type in youtube.com/LWTDB, that's the acronym for my channel, Live Windows Training DougBetts. So LWTDB. So it's youtube.com/LWTDB/live. That'll get you to whatever live stream I have scheduled next. And you'll be able
And
to
they
see
can
whatever it is.
subscribe and turn notifications on to be alerted as well.
Of course.
Do you do other social media? Do you Twitter or any other announcements of when you're going live?
No, I don't. I have accounts on all the others, but I just don't put in the time to
When
do
you're
all of that.
when you're playing Fortnite, you're not on Twitch with that?
Well, yes. When I'm on Fortnite, I'm live streaming to YouTube and Twitch and Facebook concurrently.
Good. So they can find you on those platforms if they're interested in that subject matter.
That is called Grandpa Doug Learns Fortnite.
Grandpa Doug Learns Fortnite. All right. Well, and I hope you're kicking butt and taking names.
Well, I'll tell you what my partners are. We have partners. I've got a spreadsheet of about 100 people that come in and play with us.
So kind of a clan.
Yeah, well, they come in and play and ask to play, and based upon who's got play seniority, meaning the longest ago that they played with us. Today we had a Twitch Fortnite streamer that's much larger than my following come and play with us. And Dennis Thompson is a regular partner. He's also a viewer on your channel, subscriber on your channel. But he and I we both concurrently live stream every day.
So you work together and play together.
Yeah, we do.
Right on. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and for those of you who participated in the live chat. Love interacting with the audience. And Doug, it's been too long. We need to do this more often. It's always good to see you, and I love sharing the tech stories. So we'll have to do this again.
Thank you. I was very happy to get the invitation from you.
Well, thanks again for joining me, and I just enjoy having somebody else I can relate to that's in the trenches, and it's just a lot of fun to hear the stories, and hopefully I'll have some new ones the next time we talk. The ones I shared with you today, the whole router thing, that just happened, and then the one with the switch going bad, that just happened too. So those are fresh on my mind, and hopefully I'll have some new stuff fresh on my mind next time we get together. I love sharing the stories. I think it helps people. Well, it may not be an exact problem anybody's likely going to have. It might be a little bit of information that leads them sooner to the solution. And if not, it's just entertaining.
Very good.
Well, again, thanks for joining me. Thanks for all of you for joining us. This is also being streamed on your channel, isn't it?
Right.
So you can find, if you've missed any of this video, find it. The recording of this will be available on both of our channels. Thanks for watching. We will see you all again very, very soon. And until then, bye for now.
For now.